welcome to T-Pac's Poker Channel. This series of videos will concentrate on progressive knockout tournaments on America's Card Room. If you've never played a progressive knockout or bounty tournament, give it a try. They are a lot of fun but require a few adjustments in your strategy. Here are a few of my tips. First, you want to register on time. In bounty tournaments, money starts flowing as soon as the tournament starts, so don't wait. Get in there and start collecting those scalps. It's important to get off to a good start. You want to build a stack early so when the opportunity comes, you can go for that bounty. So open your range a bit in the early going and play a little more aggressively. Similarly, if you find yourself with a smaller stack, don't fret. Tighten up, wait until you get a monster pocket, and shove pre-flop. Someone will call because they want your bounty. If your hand holds up, you've got a double up and are right back in the game. Each week or so, I'll post a new video with some hands from the latest deep run. First big hand of the day was pretty much a disaster. I've got king, queen on the button, get an early limper, player to my right does a 4x bet, I call, big blind and the early limper both call. I smash the flop with the king, deuce, 3, 2 diamonds. I do have a flush blocker with the queen. Player to my right bets, the other two get out of the way. The 6 of diamonds comes in on the turn to complete the flush, but I'm thinking he doesn't have that. He's been an aggressive player, so when he keeps betting big, I keep calling, hoping he's betting a smaller king, and of course, he has the flush. So, like I said, if you get down early, don't worry about it. Find a spot to shove and hope for the best. So, with my stack down to about 17,000, I get 6-8 suited. 6-8 is one of my favorite pockets to play. I shove, get a call. That's what you want, just one player calling. And luckily, turn a 6 and get a much needed double up. So the comeback has begun. So the next hand turns out to be the dream scenario. I get pocket aces on the button, a small stack in the big blind. It folds to me. I decide just to do a small raise, see if he'll shove. He obliges. I call, he turns over queen, jack. The run out is giving him an open-ended straight draw off the flop, but I survive the rest of it and get my first bounty while also building my stack back up to near the starting stack. So the next hand, I'm still trying to build my stack back up to the starting stack. I've got 7-10 in the big blind. A middle position player does a 2x raise, folds to me. I decide to call and see what happens. When I flop a gutter, I decide to get aggressive. I check. When he does a bet, I do a raise to see if he's just kind of perfunctory c-betting, and he was, and so I get a much needed boost to my stack. And the next hand was an interesting one. I wake up with ace-5 in middle position, under the gun limps, another guy limps, I limp, small blind limps, and the big blind checks. So we go to the flop, and I hit bottom pair. So it checks all the way to me, which is interesting. So I decide to do a half-pot bet, see what will happen. I get 2 folds. The next card is a king, and so that scares me a little bit, but it checks to me, so I just let it go. The river is a jack. No flush gets there, no straight that wasn't already there gets there, checks to me again. I decide to bet, and they both fold, so that was an interesting pot to pick up. So the next hand is the kind of hand you've got to win if you're going to make a deep run in any kind of tournament. Get ace-queen under the gun, do a min raise. Folds back to the big blind. He raises. I shove all in. Gets back to him. He's got pocket jacks. We've got a classic flip going on. And I spike a queen on the river to get a much needed boost to my stack. So this next hand is a classic example of how not to play pocket queens. So I got ace-3 on the cutoff. Under the gun, does a min raise, I call, big blind calls. They've both got small stacks. I've got a pretty good sized stack, so I can afford to take a shot here. The flop gives me a gutter, so it checks around. Turn, now pick up a pair of 3s. Under the gun does a small bet. River gets me another 3. He does a big bet, I shove. I'm not too worried about him having a flush. And he turns over pocket queen. So that is a classic example of what not to do with pocket queens. This hand is an example of why you get a big stack. So I've got over 400,000 chips, almost 400,000 chips when this hand begins. Player small stack shoves, folds to me in the big blind. I've got 9-8 off. It's going to cost me about 1/7 of my stack, so I call. He turns over pocket queens, but I hit running spades to get the flush and the bounty. Now, this next hand is an example of me not going for the bounty when I should have. I've got king, queen under the gun +1. I do a min raise. Player to my left calls. It folds to the small blind. He 3-bets. He's only got about 66,000 when this hand starts. Maybe I should have gone ahead and shoved here, but I was worried about the player to my left. Flop comes ace, jack, 7. The small blind bets big. Call. Turn is another 7. He shoves the remainder of his 16,000 in, and I should have called, but for some reason I folded. Oh well, live and learn. This next hand is a very exciting hand. I pick up 2 bounties and 1. I got a very small stack on my right. I've got ace, 10 of diamonds. He shoves all in. I decide to go all in to try to isolate. Another small stack calls, and the medium stack folds. So it's 3 ways to the showdown. I've got ace 10 versus ace 5 versus pocket deuces, and spike the jack to give me a straight on the river and pick up 2 bounties. Now, lest you think I'm hitting my bounties all the time, these next few hands are going to disprove that theory. So I've got king, jack in the middle position, folds to me. I min raise, player to my left with a small stack shoves, gets back to me, so I call and turn over my king, jack, and he's got ace, king. So dominated, and he ends up doubling up through me. So I did chase a bounty, just didn't get there. So this next hand is another example of me missing out on a bounty, but not by losing the hand. So mid player does a min raise. He's got a small stack. Folds to me, so I decide to call with a 5-7. Flop comes 7-3 deuce. So I check to see what he would do. He does nothing. Turn is another 7, so I check again to see what he would do. He does nothing. Now the river is a king, and I should have shoved all in here hoping he had hit a king, because he had, and I'm pretty sure he would have called, and I would have gotten another bounty. I did get a nice pot, but missed out on the bounty. All right, so here's another missed bounty. I'm in the big blind with queen 4. Folds to the button player. There's a small stack he shoves, and I can't believe the small blind folded here. So I go for the bounty. Not going to cost me hardly anything. Queen 4 versus king 2. I can't catch up. And so he ends up getting a good double up for him, and I missed the bounty. This next hand is an example of how you can take advantage of another player who has bounty fever. So I get queen 10 in the middle position, raise to 22,000, get 2 callers. Flop comes queen 8-7, I like that. So I do a 3/4 pot bet. Player to my left calls. Turn is another queen. I decide to do a check. He does a big bet. I shove all in, and he calls, and he flips over pocket 9s. So he was trying to get my bounty because I had a pretty big bounty at this time, and he failed. Big double up for me. So one of the challenges in a bounty tournament is to know when to transition from chasing bounties to trying to just play it straight up. I got ace-8 suited in an early position, tried to do a pretty big raise to see if I could scare people off. Ended up getting 2 callers. Should have folded, honestly, after the raise and the call. Get out of the way. Both those players had me dominated. Of course, I would have hit an 8, which sucks, but I probably should not have been in this spot to begin with. This is another example of just what not to do in the latter stages of a tournament. Queen 10 suited under the gun. That's not strong enough hand to be raising. Folds to the small blind. He calls. The big blind shoves. I should have known to get out, but I've got bounty fever. I call, and of course I run into the monster. Now I did flop an open-ended straight draw, but couldn't get there, and end up donking off 80% of my stack and bow out of the tournament a few hands later.